Greetings ladies and gents, and welcome to this video for Fork This Life, written by Jinxes 2011. This video contains chapter 23, and as always I hope that you enjoy, and if you do, please consider subscribing. Chapter 23. The fork can't move. Wait, isn't that normal? POV Ferdinand. Two horses trot along a flat dirt road. It seems a painfully slow pace to be travelling at when there are people dying every moment. Can we go any faster? I asked anxiously. If we go any faster, the horses will run out of stamina all too quickly, especially since we are riding double. Trust me, this is the best pace for travelling, Luck replied calmly. Horseshoes continued crunching against the soil in an endless rhythm, somehow making the silence even more prominent. I briefly ponder if there's anything I can say to break the silence, but most of the things I think of would be inappropriate, given the situation. Mentioning the queer behavior of the skeletons is a possibility, but I doubt that it's anything important. If the necromancer wants to divide up his forces to make it easier for us to kill them, he can go right ahead, I say. We arrive at the village a couple hours later, and the sun is starting to get low. It's unlikely that we'll be able to make it back to the city before nightfall, I think absent-mindedly, before focusing on the problem at hand. Skeletons. Dismounting from my horse, I draw my sword. 45 including the ones in the field, again with the weirdness. Also, 2 of the skeletons here have armor and weapons, informs Gerald. My eyes narrow. Unfortunately, that's not all. Mixed in with the normal, pale white skeletons or black skeletons. Now, I don't know much about skeletons, but I'm fairly sure that the white ones are the weakest of the bunch. Therefore, these black ones must be stronger. But with a couple paladins by my side, they won't be a threat. I charge into battle, but Lily and Luck overtake me before I'm even halfway to the group of skeletons that are turning to face us. From atop of a horse, Lily raises a gauntleted hand towards them. A holy light springs forth from her hand, and the skeletons it shines upon have their flames extinguish, regardless of colour. Luck mimics her action, and another group of skeletons fall apart when they stand, although a smaller number than when Lily attacked. At this rate, there won't be much left for me to do. I continue charging, but by the time I reach them, Lily and Luck have already cleaved through them, leaving only a single black skeleton. They head deeper into the village, leaving this one for me. Upon spotting me, the dark flames in its eyes blaze sinisterly. It opens its jaws wide as if it's trying to shout or scream, but no sound comes out. Then, to my shock, it starts running towards me. I barely parry its first blow, again finding myself startled by its speed and power. Until now, skeletons could be described with 2 words, tenacious, slow. But this one moves almost as fast as a regular human, and just as strong. Of course, that still isn't as strong or as fast as I am, so after the first few blows, I become accustomed to the difference and the stats to retaliate. With a kick, I shatter its leg, sending it tumbling to the ground, and with another step I stomp on its head, shattering it. Much stronger than a normal skeleton, but still weak in its own. The skull fragments crumble under my boot as I run further into the village. Everywhere I go, all I see are piles of bones and hear sounds of combat from up ahead. So I hurry along, reaching them just in time to witness the last armored undead get beheaded. Lily sheathes her immaculate blade. Perhaps only benefit of fighting undead is that you don't have to clean your weapon afterwards. Let us split up and see if we can find another one of those cats. Leaving her horse to graze on the grass by the roadside, Lily picks a direction and begins searching, with Luck doing the same. Inside the house over to your right, the one with the broken window. It's under the bed. Meanwhile, I had a helpful fork supplying me with the exact location. Striding over the house, I step over the fallen door through the entrance and follow Gerald's directions to find the bedroom. Peeking under the bed, I see a pair of feline eyes looking back at me. Stretching out her arm, I grab it, but the cat hisses and claws at my hand. I wince at the pain and try again, this time managing to pull it from beneath the bed, still flailing its limbs and trying to inflict whatever damage it can. Awkwardly trying to get a hold in such a way that it can't scratch or bite me, I hurry out of the building and call out, "I found it!" Well, Gerald found it, but he doesn't want other people to know about him, so what else can I say? And I did find it. Gerald just found it first. Lily and Luck promptly returned, and I deposit the unruly cat into her hands, where it is unable to do any harm. She closes her eyes in concentration, but soon opens them again as the cat falls limp in her hands. Again, if we're able to catch him when he's sleeping, then we'll have more time. She trails off in frustration. What now? I ask. Clean up the skeletons in the fields. Lily shakes her head. That is what I shall be doing. Meanwhile, the horses will be resting, and you will start your training with Luck. At first, I'm faintly disappointed that she wouldn't be teaching me herself, but that feeling is replaced shortly by excitement. With this training, I should be able to become at least somewhat more powerful, right? Come, let's find a more suitable area to train in. Luck beckons me over, and we find ourselves in an empty paddock, the animals formerly residing here having long since fled. He looks around and nods, drawing his sword. All right, first let's have a brief spar. I need to find out your current level of skill and style of fighting if I am able to train you. Drawing my sword, I say, I've reached advanced proficiently recently, if that helps. He shakes his head and he swings towards me, his sword little more than a gleam of silver, faster than I can react to. I try to block, but I am barely able to raise my sword halfway before his sword stops just short of my forehead, making my whole body break out in sweat. It does not. Two men can have the same proficiency and a skill, yet entirely different methods of using it. The only way for me to truly understand how you fight is to fight you, he says, lifting his sword away from my face and taking a step back. Again. This time he lets me attack and calmly parries with one of his slashes, his green eyes steadily tracking my movements as I endlessly try to breach his defenses. Enough, Luck says eventfully, sheathing his sword. I think I have a clear enough picture of how you fight now. Hands trembling, I lower my sword and try to steady my breathing. Now that I am not fighting, I notice Joe sitting on the fence nearby, a stalk of wheat wiggling about in his mouth as he chews on it. Where did he even get that? Aren't all the crops here dead? Not terrible for someone who's obviously never been trained, but not great either. However, that just means you have much room for improvement. Let us start with the basics. Luck grabs my hands, shifting them slightly on the hilt of my sword. At least part of the reason why you are so tired right now is because your grip and the stance are sloppy, he explains. You aren't exerting as much strength as you could where it matters, and exerting too much where it doesn't. There are many other problems with your style of fighting, but we'll start with that. Gerald POV. Hello, I'm bored. Hello, bored. I'm insert name here. I hear you say. But seriously, not much is happening for me. Lately, a bit of recon here, some chatting there, and the rest of my days are in silence. I'm half tempted to notify those paladins of my existence, just so that I have the freedom to move about again. Plus, there's a whole bunch of questions that I would be interested in asking someone a bit more knowledgeable than Ferdinand. But anyway, all I can do is the usual training, minus some of the more showy skills. For obvious reasons, and watch what's happening. Ferdinand's currently getting a bit of training, which is nice to see. I'm watching that closely for future reference. Never know when I might get a skill that allows me to assume a human form after all. Although, given my stats, I'd more fit into a wizard. Then again, with the strength and dex enhancement traits that I have, perhaps melee combat would be the way to go. I'd really rather use magic, but it will depend on whether I can find something with a good trait. Intelligence and wisdom, all I can think of in terms of intelligent animals are dolphins, and for wisdom I'm drawing a complete blank. I mean, they have say owls are wise, but are they really? Then, what about the monsters? I can think plenty of intelligent monsters, but that generally means they are of a similar intelligence to a human. I need something particularly intelligent or wise. Mind flayers come to mind, and I didn't get that last time, but maybe if I come across another, an evil one in the future. Dragons are often depicted as intelligent and wise too, but I don't think getting a dragon is currently within the range of my capabilities. Not much else I can think of, but what to do? After all the time playing it before, I pretty much hate Minesweeper now. I suppose only thing I can do is meditate. Meditate the days away. Patience. Telling myself to be patient seems almost like an insult after how long I've waited. Days and villages go by, a constant life of traveling, fighting, and training. For them. Guys, reckon we can switch places for a bit. Almost 60 in this village with 4 of the armored ones. Looks like we managed to get one of them this time. Some of the villagers are still fighting. As always, I inform Ferdinand of the movements within the village as soon as we get in range. Ugh, scratched that the last one just got mobbed. Well, at least this time we'll be able to recover their bodies. Every single time there hasn't been a single corpse in the village, as if the village had just vanished and were replaced by skeletons. Except that would mean that there would be more skeletons in each village. By now I'm quite curious what exactly the necromancer is doing, so I'm keeping a close eye, so to speak, on the events currently happening. The skeletons are carrying the bodies to the center of the village where the usual cat is watching them. Once they are all there, a huge mass of mana appears in the village, and the suddenness of which temporarily blinds me. Seconds later, it disappears, and along with it all the bodies and the skeletons carrying them. Huh? Did they just teleport or something? I'm so shocked and confused that I missed most of what Lily is saying about summoning magic. Right, makes sense, but now I reckon I can say because magic to anything that I don't understand. Alright, whatever. Moving on. Ignoring what just happened, the rest is as usual. Running into the village, re-kill all of those undead, find the cat dies, move on to the next village. Some adventurers turn up now and again to help, which is something, but the army is still conspicuous by its absence. By now, anyone with half a brain in this empire should be able to see that the necromancer has some ties to the people at the top echelons of society. But then again, some of the nobles on the city lords seem to have less than half a brain. How on earth has this empire held itself together when most of the people of importance are blithering idiots who, when not sleeping, are either spending money extravagantly, losing themselves in debauchery, or yelling at some unlucky chap in the street because their face looks funny? Honestly, I hope the rest of the world isn't like this. Ferdinand point of view. Crackling, the light spits out sparks and curves through the air, landing only a wink out a moment later. I roll my stiff shoulders. The rigorous training in the past week has been taking its toll on my body. Gerald is lying somewhere in my pack as usual, probably bored out of his mind, as he so often tells me. Like me, Lily and Luck are seated around the fire, sipping at bowls of vegetable stew. Their god apparently restricts them from eating meat unless they have to. Personally, I enjoy a good steak, but this isn't half bad either. Like every other night, both of them have taken it off their armor and are instead dressed in simple tunics and leggings. Like this, I can hardly liken them to the usual appearances. Armored holy knights that will dominate the battlefield or heal the wounded wherever they appear. Finishing gulping down the stew, I set the wooden bowl down to one side. It will be cleaned before we leave in the morning. Stomach full, a question comes to my mind and I can't help but voice. You two are very strong, so how is it that I've not heard of you before we met? Luck lifts his gaze from the fire. We came from far north, so it is not a surprise that you have never heard of us. He looks over at Lily, a hint of amusement in his eyes. Besides, even we did not know each other before this. It was only when I was upon the Empire's borders that I heard our Lord's voice telling me where to find Lily, and that she would be heading on the mission here. My eyebrows raised involuntarily. You get along well for two people who barely know each other. Why would we not? Black shrugs. We serve the same god after all, and Lily is such an accomplished wizard that it's hard for me not to be in awe of her. While I appreciate this sentiment, I am only proficient in a few miscellaneous magical skills. I cannot claim to be anything more than average in other areas. Lily leaned forward, warming her hand over the fire. Rather, your skill with the sword is much more impressive. It approaches that of an old master's where I live. Luck smiles slightly. My sword master says that he's nearly out of things to teach me. Soon I'll only be able to rely on myself to improve further. How about you, Ferdinand? What are you good at? Taken by surprise, I say the first thing that comes to mind. Farming. Farming was the only thing that I was ever good at. Why did you never go back to farming then? Luck asked curiously. I never thought about it before, so I take a moment to think before answering. I suppose I saw too many people who needed help, and not enough people who were helping them. If I went back to farming, that would mean more people wouldn't be able to get that help. How noble. You might do well as a paladin yourself, Lily says, and then turns to... Was Joe sitting there the whole time? That guy was so quiet that it was hard to notice him, I swear. And how about you, Joe? I don't expect him to answer, but to my surprise he actually does. Actually, I'm a farmer too. Pulling the straw hat from behind his back and he places it on his head. It's hard work, you know. Figured I'd take a short break after all the ends and go back to the farm for me. Call me skeptical, but I don't believe him, says Gerald. You could hear what he's saying, I asked. Nah, he's writing it on the ground. I look at his finger, and indeed he's on the ground. It is still right now, but I know from experience that it can go at an incredible speed. I go back to the original topic, but doesn't mean anything if he's lying. No, Gerald sighs, it doesn't. Or rather, it would make less sense if he's telling the truth. But either way, we know too little about him to determine anything. Even friend or foe, although from his actions so far, it's neither. Really, there's no point in thinking too much about it. I never did. How close are you to finding the necromancer's location? Luck asks Lily in the meantime. Lily takes out a map and looks at it. The directions I'm able to find with every one of these cat familiars are quite inexact, but if I can do it once more, maybe 2 more times, I should be able to narrow down to one area. Furrowing his brows, Luck asks, and if he has not been staying in one area? It would make something difficult, but in that case, there should be a larger deviations in the direction, and a pattern that he could follow. She answers, Then it looks like a big day tomorrow. We should get some rest. A dim, pale light shines down on the world as Tarok glowers down, alone in his own piece of the sky. One ghostly, pale hand resting lightly on the rails of a balcony, a young man looks up at the sky and shivers. Turning around, he walks back into the room, pulling the gilded doors close behind him. He glances briefly at the large bed, with its silken sheets twisted into knotted clumps at the foot, and walks instead to his desk. He sits down with a practiced motion, and reaches under his desk and presses a concealed button. His other hand enters a number combination, and a slight click notifies him that the secret compartment is unlocked. Apparently, the man thinks that even this is not enough security, because the book he slips out from the compartment is itself padlocked. Taking the key from where it hangs around his neck, he unlocks it. Glancing fearfully about the room one last time, he opens the book and flips through to an empty page. Taking up a magical pen on the desk, he begins to write. Night 257. Questions surround me no matter what answers I give, and those who should be loyal hounds bay for my blood without regret for what I feed them. I fear that soon all my plans will unravel, and with them so too will the noose be tied for my demise. Oh, how I wish that I could simply leave this all behind. But archers lay in wait to fall me with arrows, daggers lurk in the night, and soon enough my own soldiers will march against me. Only here am I safe, and yet even here my protectors will tear me limb from limb if I so much as utter the wrong word. What a fool I was, what a fool I am. If only I had never been brought here, if only I had run when I still could. Too late, too late. I still cannot sleep. The tear glistens against his pale skin as he once again locks the book, placed in its compartment, and resets the mechanism. Head in hands, he weeps. End of chapter. And that, my friends, is the end of the video. I hope that you enjoyed. If you did, please consider supporting the author from the links down below. And if you'd like to support this channel, there are numerous ways listed down below. The easiest of which would be to share this channel, subscribe, like and comment, and all the other stuff that Google wants us to push. But anyways, until the next video, I hope that you all have a good one, and I'll see you then. Cheers.